Picture this. Christmas
To
morning,
new beginnings
a room full of
and
your
answered
husband's family.
prayers. Cheers.
40 people dressed in
Cheers.
designer clothes, sipping champagne.
See that flickering right there?
Your mother-in-law
That is
stands
the
up with a
heartbeat.
smile that could cut glass.
Everything
Your
looks
husband
strong and
hands you a
healthy.
gift wrapped in gold foil.
Look at
You
this.
think it's jewelry,
12.3
maybe an
million.
apology for months of distance.
Caymans.
You tear open the envelope.
Are you sure this is
It's
real?
divorce papers. And then they start cheering, applauding, toasting
How dare
champagne
you show your
glasses to your
face here
destruction.
tonight?
His mother
Get out!
screams, finally taking out the trash.
How could you do this
40
to our
people
family?
celebrating the end of your
I
marriage
always
like it's a
knew you
football
were
victory.
trash, but this is
But here's what they didn't know.
unforgivable.
Sarah Brennan was 5 weeks pregnant that morning, and she was about to discover something that would bring their entire empire crashing down. This is the story of a woman who lost everything on Christmas Day and decided she wouldn't just survive. She would make them pay. Every single one of them. By the time she was done, a family dynasty would be destroyed, a criminal would be behind bars, and the people who cheered would be begging for mercy. This is the Christmas betrayal. And trust me, you need to hear what happened next. The envelope was wrapped in gold foil. It sat right next to the roast turkey. But before we get to that Christmas morning, before the champagne toasts and the cheering that would shatter Sarah Brennan's world into 1,000 pieces, we need to go back 24 hours. Back to Christmas Eve, when everything still seemed salvageable. When Sarah still believed that love and loyalty and 5 years of marriage meant something. Sarah sat on the cold tile floor of the guest bathroom in the Whitmore estate, staring at 2 pink lines on a white plastic stick. Her hands trembled as she held the pregnancy test up to the light, as if different angles might change the result. But there it was, undeniable, irrefutable. She was pregnant, 5 weeks maybe. She'd been feeling off for nearly a month now. The exhaustion that no amount of coffee could touch. The nausea that hit her in waves, usually around 10 in the morning when she was deep into spreadsheets at Whitmore Industries. The tenderness in her breast that made her regular bras uncomfortable. She told herself it was stress. The late nights at the office, restructuring the company's entire financial backend after their lead developer quit. The growing distance between her and Marcus, her husband of 5 years. The way his mother, Catherine, looked at her like she was gum stuck to the bottom of a Prada shoe. But deep down, Sarah had known. Women always know. She stood up slowly, legs shaky, and wrapped the test in toilet paper before tucking it into her makeup bag. She couldn't leave it in the trash where housekeeping might find it. Not yet. This was her secret, her news to share. And she was going to tell Marcus tomorrow morning on Christmas Day, surrounded by family and warmth and the promise of new beginnings. This baby would fix everything. It had to. Sarah looked at herself in the mirror. At 32, she was still beautiful, though exhaustion had etched fine lines around her eyes. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup yet. She was wearing old pajamas, the comfortable kind that Marcus used to tease her about. Back when he still noticed what she wore. Back when he still slept in their bed instead of claiming he needed the guest room because of his early morning meetings. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to imagine his reaction. Would he cry? Would he lift her up and spin her around like he used to do when they first got married? Would the news break through the wall that had grown between them over the past year? Sarah walked back to the master bedroom, the enormous suite that occupied the entire east wing of the Whitmore mansion. Marcus wasn't there. His side of the bed was perfectly made, untouched. He hadn't come to bed at all. She checked her phone. It was nearly midnight. Christmas Eve was turning into Christmas morning, and her husband was somewhere else in this 15,000 square foot house, probably with his family, probably with his mother, Catherine, who'd been staying at the estate for the past month, ostensibly to help plan the Christmas celebration. More likely to drive a wedge between Sarah and Marcus, which she'd been doing with a surgical precision since the day they got married. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. Catherine. Family gathering at 10 a.m. sharp. Wear something appropriate. Brittany will be attending. Sarah's stomach dropped, and it had nothing to do with morning sickness. Brittany Sinclair, Marcus's childhood sweetheart, the daughter of a Texas senator, blonde and leggy with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a trust fund that could buy a small island. The woman Catherine had always wanted Marcus to marry instead of the Irish girl from Boston with a working-class background and a state school degree. Brittany had been at every family dinner for the past 6 months, every gala, every casual weekend gathering, always seated next to Marcus, always touching his arm when she laughed, always wearing designer everything while Sarah felt increasingly frumpy in her sensible work clothes. Sarah had tried to talk to Marcus about how inappropriate it was, about how it made her feel. "You're being paranoid," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. "Brittany is an old friend. Mother likes her. Can't you just try to get along with my family for once?" For once, as if Sarah hadn't spent 5 years trying to win Catherine's approval. 5 years of swallowing insults disguised as advice. 5 years of being reminded that she wasn't good enough, wasn't from the right background, wasn't worthy of the Whitmore name. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, Sarah would announce her pregnancy, and everything would change. Catherine couldn't dismiss her then. She'd be carrying the Whitmore heir. She'd finally matter. Sarah wrapped Marcus's Christmas gift, a vintage Rolex she'd saved 6 months to afford, and placed it carefully under the tree in their private sitting room. Then she practiced in front of the mirror. "Marcus, I know things have been hard between us, but I have something to tell you. We're going to have a baby. We're going to be a family." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears, but she pushed the doubt away. This was going to work. This had to work. Because if it didn't, Sarah wasn't sure what she had left. She climbed into the massive bed alone, one hand resting on her still flat stomach, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow was hope. Tomorrow was the day everything would get better. She had no idea tomorrow was the day her life would end. Sarah woke at 6:30 on Christmas morning to the sound of her phone buzzing. Not Marcus coming to bed, he still hadn't, but a call from her mother. "Mom," Sarah answered, voice thick with sleep. "Is everything okay?" "Sweetheart, I'm sorry to call so early on Christmas." Maggie Brennan's voice was exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that came from working double shifts as a hospital nurse. "It's about David." Sarah sat up quickly, suddenly wide awake. David, her younger brother, 29 years old and still fighting demons from 2 tours in Iraq. "What happened?" Sarah demanded. "He had an episode last night, a bad one. The VA hospital couldn't calm him down. They're talking about an involuntary psychiatric hold if he doesn't stabilize soon." Maggie's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, honey. I know you have that big family thing today. I just thought you should know." Sarah pressed her hand against her mouth. David, sweet, brave David, who'd enlisted at 18 because they couldn't afford college. David, who'd come home with a Purple Heart and PTSD so severe he couldn't hold down a job. David, who Kira had been financially supporting for the past 3 years, paying for treatment the VA wouldn't cover. "Mom, I'll handle it," Sarah said firmly. "I'll call his caseworker today. You just take care of yourself, okay?" "When does your shift end?" "Not until 8 tonight. Double pay on holidays, you know we need it." Maggie paused. "How are things there, with Marcus's family?" Sarah looked around the empty bedroom, at the untouched side of Marcus's bed, at the wrapped present under the tree that he probably wouldn't even open. "It's fine, Mom," Sarah lied. "It's perfect. I'll call you later." She hung up and immediately felt a wave of nausea, morning sickness. She barely made it to the bathroom before vomiting. When she finally emerged, she found Catherine's text from last night glowing on her phone screen. "Family gathering at 10 a.m. sharp. Wear something appropriate. Brittany will be attending." Sarah looked at the time. 9:15. She had 45 minutes to make herself presentable. 45 minutes to put on the mask of the perfect daughter-in-law. 45 minutes before she walked into whatever Catherine had planned. She showered quickly, fighting waves of nausea, and chose a modest green dress that still fit her not quite showing body. She pulled her hair back, applied minimal makeup, and looked at herself one last time in the mirror. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "Just get through today. Then tell Marcus about the baby. Everything will be fine." But as she walked down the grand staircase toward the sound of voices and laughter in the great room, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking toward an execution. She just didn't know it was her own. The great room of the Whitmore estate looked like something from a magazine. A 20-foot Christmas tree dominated the space, decorated with what Sarah knew were antique ornaments worth more than most people's cars. Garlands draped every surface. A fire roared in the massive stone fireplace. And 40 people, Whitmore family, business associates, Houston society elite, milled about in their designer Christmas best, sipping champagne and eating canapes that probably cost $50 apiece. Sarah stepped into the room and immediately felt underdressed. Every other woman was wearing something that screamed money. Sarah's simple green dress might as well have had a sign around its neck saying, "I shop at department stores." "Sarah," Catherine Whitmore's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. "How quaint. You look like you're retaining water. Perhaps ease up on the holiday cookies?" Polite laughter rippled through the nearby guests. Sarah felt her face burn. Catherine Whitmore stood at the center of the room like a queen holding court. At 62, she was still striking. Blonde hair that was either naturally maintaining its color or expertly dyed, pearls that probably cost more than Sarah's car, and a smile that could freeze blood. She looked at Sarah the way people look at mildew. "Good morning, Catherine," Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Merry Christmas." Catherine's eyes swept over Sarah with visible distaste. "Marcus is by the tree. Do try not to embarrass us, dear." Sarah moved through the crowd, nodding at people she barely knew until she spotted her husband. Marcus Whitmore stood near the massive Christmas tree, holding a champagne flute and laughing at something someone had said. At 35, he was handsome in that generic way that rich men often are. Good jawline, expensive haircut, the kind of casual confidence that comes from never really struggling for anything. And standing next to him, her hand resting possessively on his arm, was Brittany Sinclair. Brittany looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog, blonde hair in perfect beach waves, a designer red dress that hugged her figure, diamonds at her throat, and her hand, her manicured ring-free hand, resting on Sarah's husband's arm while she laughed at his jokes. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her stomach, to the tiny cluster of cells that would become her baby. Marcus's baby, their baby. She walked over, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Marcus," Sarah said, "Merry Christmas." He turned, and for just a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt? Regret? But it was gone so quickly Sarah thought she might have imagined it. "Sarah," he said flatly, "you're up. Brittany, you remember my wife." Wife. The way he said it sounded like an obligation, a burden. "Of course." Brittany's smile was brilliant and completely fake. "Sarah, you look lovely, so natural. I always admire women who don't need all the fuss." Her eyes swept over Sarah's simple dress, her minimal makeup. "Everyone has their station in life, don't they?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but Charlotte Whitmore, Marcus's younger sister, giggled behind her champagne flute. "Ideally, the help stays in the kitchen, though," Charlotte said, loud enough for the people around them to hear. More laughter. Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck. "I'm his wife," Sarah said, voice tight, "not the help." "For now," Catherine murmured, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. Sarah looked at Marcus, silently begging him to defend her, to tell his family to back off, to act like her husband. But Marcus just looked away, taking another sip of champagne. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out gratefully, glad for an excuse to escape. "I need to take this," she said, and hurried into the hallway. It was David's caseworker. Sarah spent 10 minutes on the phone, arranging for additional psychiatric support, promising to send money she didn't really have for treatment the VA wouldn't cover. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. "Everything all right?" Sarah turned to find James Beaumont, Catherine's attorney, standing in the hallway. He was a distinguished-looking man in his late 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes that seemed out of place in this den of vipers. "Fine," Sarah lied. "Just family stuff." James nodded slowly. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. But then Catherine's voice rang out from the great room. "Everyone, time for gifts!" Sarah followed James back into the room where the family was gathering around the Christmas tree. The gift exchange was a spectacle. Car keys, jewelry, stock certificates, designer handbags. Everything excessive. Everything designed to show off wealth. Sarah placed her carefully wrapped gift, the vintage Rolex, in front of Marcus. He barely glanced at it. "Before we continue," Marcus said, standing up suddenly, "I have a gift for Sarah." Sarah's heart leaped. He remembered. He got her something. Maybe everything would be okay after all. Marcus pulled a thick manila envelope from behind his chair. It wasn't wrapped. No bow, no card, just the logo of Whitmore, Stone and Associates, Houston's most aggressive divorce firm. Sarah stared at it, confused. Marcus, what is this? Some kind of joke about tax documents? You know I handled the company finances, so open it, Marcus said. His voice was cold, flat, the voice of a stranger. The room went silent. 40 pairs of eyes watched as Sarah's hands shook opening the envelope. She pulled out the document. Bold letters across the top, petition for dissolution of marriage. Time stopped. Sarah's brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Dissolution of marriage. The words swam before her eyes. What is this? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. It's exactly what it looks like, Marcus said. I want a divorce. The papers were filed on December 20th. You're being served now, on Christmas, because I wanted our families present. The world tilted. Sarah gripped the back of a chair to keep from falling. Marcus, I don't understand, she said, voice breaking. We can talk about this. I have something to tell you. There's nothing to discuss, dear. Catherine stood up, her face radiating triumph. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad. You get your personal belongings, your car, and whatever pittance is in your personal savings account. You have until tonight to vacate the premises. Catherine, please, Sarah begged. Marcus, we're trying for a baby. We just talked about booking the fertility clinic last week. I was lying, Marcus said flatly. He reached out and took Brittany's hand, interlacing their fingers on top of the pristine white tablecloth. Sarah, just stop. Brittany and I have reconnected. We realize we have wasted enough time. Brittany stood up gracefully, placing her hand on her stomach with practiced care. I'm pregnant, Sarah, Brittany said softly. 14 weeks. It's a ball. Marcus is going to be a father. We're going to be a family. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. She clutched her own stomach instinctively. 5 weeks. She was 5 weeks pregnant. Tell them. Tell them now. But before she could speak, Catherine raised her champagne flute high. To the future, Catherine shouted. To finally taking out the trash. Preston Whitmore, Marcus's older brother, slammed his hand on the table. Here, here. About damn time. Charlotte jumped up, clapping. Welcome to the family, Brittany. Thank God we're getting an upgrade. And then it happened. The entire room erupted in applause. Cheering, whistling, toasting. 40 people celebrating the destruction of Sarah's marriage like it was a football victory. Celebrating her humiliation like it was cause for champagne. Sarah stood frozen, divorce papers clutched in her hands, as her husband's family cheered for her erasure. You're cheering, Sarah said, voice trembling with a mix of shock and growing rage. You're actually cheering. Marcus gave a weak smile, like a child who'd finally done something to please his mother. Sarah, don't make a scene. You knew this wasn't working. I knew. Sarah's voice got stronger. I saved your company, Marcus. 2 years ago, when your developers quit and you were bleeding contracts, who rebuilt the entire back-end system? Who worked 80-hour weeks while you played golf? You were paid, dear, Catherine said dismissively, rather generously for someone of your limited background. Consider it job training. I'm your wife. You were a mistake, Catherine interrupted. A clerical error we've finally corrected. Now, security will escort you out. Don't try to take anything that isn't explicitly yours. We've had the house inventoried. Sarah looked at Marcus one last time. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Her hand moved to her stomach, to the secrets she'd been ready to share. But Charlotte's voice cut through the moment. Seriously, Brittany, how did you hide it for 14 weeks? You look amazing. Meanwhile, Sarah's been packing on pounds for months. Cruel laughter echoed through the room. Sarah realized in that moment, if she told them about her pregnancy now, they'd think she was lying. Desperate, trying to compete with Brittany, they'd never believe her. And Catherine would find a way to take this baby too. I'll leave, Sarah said quietly. She folded the divorce papers carefully and placed them back in the envelope. She walked to the archway with measured steps, even though her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. At the threshold, she stopped and turned back. The cheering had died down, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Remember this moment, Sarah said, her voice carrying through the silent room. Remember the taste of that champagne, because it's the last time any of you will taste victory. By next Christmas, none of you will be sitting at this table. Get out, Catherine shrieked. Sarah walked out into the cold December morning. No coat, no purse, just the divorce papers clutched in her hand. She walked down the long, winding driveway, past perfectly manicured lawns, past Range Rovers and Mercedes, past the life she'd tried so hard to build. Her phone rang. Rachel, her best friend from college, the one person in Houston who still gave a damn about her. Rachel, Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. I need you to pick me up. Sarah, what's wrong? You sound, just come. The Whitmore estate. And Rachel, I'm going to need your guest room for a while. She hung up and stood in the cold, one hand on her stomach. They thought they'd broken her, thought she'd cry and beg and prove she was the trash they believed her to be. But something had happened in that moment of humiliation. Something cold and sharp had clicked into place. Sarah wasn't broken, she was forged. Rachel's beat-up Honda pulled up to the gates of the Whitmore estate 30 minutes later. Sarah stood there shivering in her thin green dress, no coat, no purse, just the divorce papers clutched against her chest, like a shield that had failed to protect her. Rachel jumped out of the car, pulling an emergency blanket from her trunk, the kind ER nurses always kept on hand. She wrapped it around Sarah's shoulders without saying a word. Just pulled her into a tight hug. Get in the car, Rachel said. We're going to my place. Sarah climbed into the passenger seat, her body moving on autopilot. As they pulled away from the estate, her phone started buzzing with notifications. She looked down at the screen, watching her life systematically dismantled in real time. Bank notification. Joint account frozen. Available balance, $0. Insurance company, you have been removed from Marcus Whitmore's health insurance plan, effective midnight December 25th. Credit card company, your American Express card has been declined and closed by primary account holder. Building security, please notify us of change of residence for package delivery purposes. She's fast, Sarah whispered. Catherine moved fast. How much do you have in your personal account? Rachel asked, her hands tight on the steering wheel. Sarah pulled up her banking app with shaking fingers. $847. That's it. Rachel was silent for a moment. You'll stay with me. I've got the guest room. Well, Emma and I share the bedroom, so you'll have the living room couch, but... Rachel! Sarah doubled over suddenly, gasping. Stop the car! What? What's wrong? Sarah's hand went to her stomach. She felt wetness between her legs. Warm. Wrong. Something's wrong. I'm bleeding. Rachel's eyes went wide. Bleeding? Sarah, what? She stopped, realization dawning on her face. Wait, are you? I'm pregnant, Sarah said, tears finally coming. I found out last night. 4 weeks, maybe 5. I was going to tell Marcus this morning. I thought it would fix everything. Rachel slammed on the brakes and pulled into a parking lot, already grabbing her phone. We're going to the ER. Now, my ER. Memorial Hermann Hospital's emergency room was chaos on Christmas Day. Drunk drivers, heart attacks, cooking accidents. But Rachel bypassed triage using her staff access, getting Sarah into an exam room within minutes. Dr. Helen Wright, the OBGYN on call, was a no-nonsense woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and efficient hands. You're about 5 weeks along, Dr. Wright said after the examination. The bleeding is concerning, but not uncommon in early pregnancy. What worries me more is your blood pressure, 160/105. That's stroke territory, Sarah. Is the baby okay? Sarah's voice was raw with panic. Please, tell me the baby's okay. Dr. Wright turned the ultrasound screen towards Sarah, a tiny flicker of movement, a heartbeat. There, Dr. Wright said, pointing. See that? Strong heartbeat, 120 beats per minute. Your baby is fighting. Sarah stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. That tiny flutter on the monitor was hers, was real, was the only thing she had left in the world. I'm going to lose everything, Sarah whispered. I have no money, no home, no health insurance as of midnight tonight. How am I supposed to take care of this baby? Dr. Wright's expression softened but remained firm. First, you're not losing this baby today. Second, we have programs for uninsured patients. Third, I'm going to be very clear with you. Stress at your current levels will cause complications. You need to reduce stress or this becomes a high-risk pregnancy. Do you understand? How do I reduce stress when my entire life just exploded? Sarah asked. Rachel took Sarah's hand. You focus on one thing at a time. Right now, the only thing that matters is keeping you and that baby safe. Everything else we handle later. They were preparing to leave when Sarah's phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered, her heart sinking. Hello? Sarah, honey, it's about David. Her mother's voice was shaking on the edge of hysteria. Mom, what happened? He broke out of the hospital. He's in a police car right now. They're saying he drove to the Whitmore estate. He crashed his car through the front gate. He was drunk, Sarah. DUI, destruction of property. They're talking felony charges. If he's convicted, he loses his VA benefits. He loses everything. The world tilted again. Sarah gripped the edge of the hospital bed to keep from falling. Is he hurt? Sarah managed to ask. Physically? Scrapes and bruises. But Sarah, they found your divorce papers in his bag. He saw them somehow. He was trying to, I think he was trying to defend you. Where are you now? At the police station. But honey, bail is set at $25,000. I don't have that kind of money. I don't know what to do. I'll figure it out, Mom. I'll figure it out. Sarah hung up and stared at her bank balance on her phone screen. $847. She had $847. A baby she couldn't afford, a brother facing prison, and a family that wanted to erase her from existence. She looked at Rachel, truly broken for the first time. I don't know how to fix this, Sarah said. I don't even know where to start. Rachel gripped her shoulders. You start by surviving. That's all. You survive today, then tomorrow, and the next day. And while you're surviving, you think, you plan. And when you're ready, what? Sarah's voice was hollow. When I'm ready, what? Rachel's eyes were hard as steel. You burn their world down. 3 weeks crawled by like years. Sarah lived on Rachel's pull-out couch in a 2-bedroom apartment in Montrose. The apartment was small but clean, filled with the chaos of Rachel's 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Toys scattered across the floor, Disney princess posters on the walls, the sound of children's shows Oz playing on repeat. Sarah's daily routine became a desperate scramble for survival. 6 in the morning, she'd wake up vomiting from morning sickness. By 7, she was sending out job applications to companies that would never respond. Catherine's blacklisting was thorough and effective. At 9, she'd log into her laptop and do freelance bookkeeping for small businesses. The only work she could get with her suddenly toxic reputation, $300 a week if she was lucky, barely enough for prenatal vitamins. At 2 in the afternoon, David's overwhelmed public defender would call with updates that weren't really updates. The prosecution wanted to make an example of him. They were pushing for 5 years in prison. The firearm in his truck, unloaded but present, made it a felony. By 4, medical bills would arrive. $8,000 for the emergency room visit. No insurance. Payment plans that would take her 10 years to pay off. Rachel would come home from her shift at 6, usually bringing leftovers from the hospital cafeteria. Sarah would thank her, feeling like a burden, feeling like the charity case Catherine had always claimed she was. And every night at 8, Sarah would open her laptop and review the files she'd backed up before her termination. The financial records of Whitmore Industries. The company she'd spent 5 years rebuilding. The company she knew inside and out. It was on January 15th, nearly a month after the Christmas divorce, that Sarah found it. She was reviewing payment ledgers from the past 5 years, cross-referencing vendor invoices with actual work completed. It was tedious, mind-numbing work. But Sarah had always been good with numbers, good at finding patterns, good at seeing what didn't add up. And nothing about these payments added up. Rachel, Sarah called out, her heart starting to race. Can you come here? Rachel walked over from the kitchen where she'd been making mac and cheese for Emma. What is it? Sarah turned her laptop screen around. Look at this, Summit Construction Services. We paid them $2.4 million over 3 years for subcontracting work. Okay, Rachel said slowly. So? Well, so I pulled up their business registration. The company was incorporated 6 years ago in Delaware. No website, no physical address beyond a P.O. box, no employees listed, no work history before they started contracting with us. Sarah pulled up another window. And look at this, Apex Materials Supply, $3.8 million. Same story. Delaware Corporation, P.O. Box, no evidence they actually exist. She pulled up more windows, fingers flying across the keyboard. Horizon Consulting Group, $4.2 million. Meridian Logistics, $1.9 million. All Delaware corporations, all with no physical presence, all routing to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Rachel leaned closer, squinting at the screen. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Catherine's been embezzling, Sarah said, voice shaking with the mix of fear and exhilaration, for at least 5 years. Shell companies, ghost vendors, fake invoices. She siphoned over $12 million out of Whitmore Industries. Can you prove it? Sarah pulled up more files. I have copies of everything. Invoices, wire transfers, shell company registrations, Catherine's signature on every approval, all routing to accounts in her name. So go to the police, Rachel said. Turn her in. She goes to prison. Sarah was already shaking her head. It's not that simple. Look at the dates on some of these transactions. I processed them. As financial controller, I authorized the payments because Catherine told me to. She could claim I was involved. I can't risk getting arrested when I'm pregnant. So what are you going to do? Sarah stared at the evidence on her screen. $12 million. 12 million reasons Catherine wanted her gone. She'd been too close to the books. Eventually, she would have noticed the discrepancies. I need leverage, Sarah said, and I need money. I can't fight her from Rachel's couch with $800 in my bank account. An idea began to form. Risky, potentially stupid, but Sarah was running out of options. I'm going to contact Dalton Construction, Sarah said, Whitmore's biggest competitor. I'm going to offer them my services as a forensic consultant. Rachel's eyes widened. You're going to help their competition? I'm going to analyze public filings and industry reports. What I do with my personal knowledge of Whitmore's weaknesses, that's consultation. Sarah closed her laptop. Catherine destroyed my life, took my home, my job, my reputation. She's coming for my baby. I'm done playing defense. This is dangerous, Rachel warned. I know, Sarah said, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. But I'm out of safe options. Richard Dalton was in his early 60s, with silver hair and the weathered face of a man who'd spent decades in Texas construction. His office in downtown Houston was modest compared to the Whitmore estate, functional rather than flashy. He sat across from Sarah, fingers steepled, studying her with sharp blue eyes. You worked for Catherine Whitmore for 5 years, he said. Why would I trust you? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Because she destroyed my life, took everything from me, and I have access to information that could bury her company. I'm offering you a legal way to outmaneuver them. I'm not asking you to do anything unethical. I'm asking you to hire me to analyze public filings and industry reports. What I know about their internal weaknesses, that's consultation. And what do you want in return? $15,000 advance payment, then $5,000 monthly retainer for 6 months, and a benefits package that includes health insurance for a high-risk pregnancy. Richard raised his eyebrows. You're pregnant? 11 weeks, Sarah said, with my ex-husband's baby, which is part of why Catherine wants me gone. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You've got guts, Miss Brennan. I'll give you that. Deal. They shook hands. Sarah walked out of Richard Dalton's office with a contract in her hand and something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. With the $15,000 advance, Sarah immediately bailed David out of jail. She met him at the county lockup on a cold January evening, watching through the chain-link fence as her brother walked out in the clothes he'd been arrested in. David looked terrible, thinner than she remembered, dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw her, his face crumpled. I'm so sorry, he said, pulling her into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I saw the news about your arrest, the mugshot. They called you a criminal. I just lost it. I wanted to make them pay. I know, Sarah said, holding him. I know. But David, you can't save me by destroying yourself. What are we going to do? And he asked. Sarah thought about the evidence she'd gathered, the embezzlement, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. She thought about Catherine's smug face as she'd handed her those divorce papers on Christmas morning. We're going to survive, Sarah said, and then we're going to fight back. 9 weeks pregnant turned into 10, then 11. Sarah had her first official prenatal appointment with Dr. Wright, paid for by her new health insurance through Dalton Construction. Everything looks good, Dr. Wright said, showing Sarah the ultrasound. Baby is measuring perfectly for 11 weeks. Heartbeat is strong. How are you feeling? Tired, Sarah admitted, nauseous, terrified. The first two are normal. The third, that's something we need to address. Your blood pressure is still elevated, 140/95. Not as bad as Christmas, but still concerning. Are you under a lot of stress? Sarah almost laughed. Stress, that was putting it mildly. I'm working on it, she said. She moved out of Rachel's apartment and into a small studio of her own. It wasn't much, 400 square feet in a building that had seen better days, but it was hers. She set up her laptop on a card table and continued working for Dalton, analyzing Whitmore Industries' public filings, building a comprehensive case against Catherine's financial mismanagement. And she started gathering evidence, real evidence, the kind that would stand up in court. Her phone rang one evening, unknown number. She answered cautiously. Ms. Brennan? An unfamiliar male voice. Speaking. My name is Detective Frank Morrison. I'm with the Houston Police Department's Financial Crimes Division. I understand you have information about fraudulent activity at Whitmore Industries. Sarah's heart raced. This was it. Someone was finally listening. I do, she said. $12 million in embezzlement over 5 years. I have documentation. Everything you'd need for a federal case. I'd like to meet with you. Can you come to the station tomorrow? Say 10 in the morning? Sarah looked at her calendar. She had a doctor's appointment at 2, but she could make it work. I'll be there, she said. After she hung up, Sarah called Rachel. Someone from the police called, Sarah said. They want to see the evidence. That's great, Rachel said. Right? That's what you wanted. Yeah, Sarah said, but something nagged at her. Something felt off about the detective's voice. Too smooth, too eager. Be careful, Rachel said, echoing Sarah's own thoughts. But Sarah pushed the worry aside. This was her chance, her opportunity to finally expose Catherine and get justice. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. Sarah arrived at the Houston Police Department Financial Crimes Division at 9:45 in the morning, 15 minutes early. She carried a messenger bag containing flash drives, printed documents, and spreadsheets highlighting every suspicious transaction she'd found. Detective Frank Morrison met her in the lobby. He was in his mid-40s with a friendly smile and an expensive watch that seemed out of place on a cop's salary. But Sarah was too focused on finally getting justice to notice the warning signs. Ms. Brennan, he said, shaking her hand, thank you for coming in. Why don't we go somewhere private where we can talk? He led her to an interrogation room. Again, Sarah should have noticed, but she was 11 weeks pregnant, exhausted, and desperate for someone in authority to finally listen to her. She spread the evidence across the table. Catherine Whitmore has been embezzling from Whitmore Industries for at least 5 years, Sarah said. $12.3 million. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Fake invoices, wire transfers. I have proof of every transaction. Detective Morrison reviewed the documents, his face neutral. This is extensive. You've been very thorough, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm sorry, Ms. Brennan now, correct? Yes, look, I just want to do the right thing. This is corporate fraud. It affects shareholders, employees, everyone. I appreciate your civic duty, Morrison said. I'll need to keep these originals for evidence. Can you step into the waiting room while I make some calls? This needs to go up the chain immediately. Sarah stepped outside, relieved, victorious even. Finally, someone was taking her seriously. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Sarah was starting to get worried when Morrison returned, with 2 uniformed officers. Sarah Brennan, Morrison said, his friendly demeanor gone. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and theft of corporate documents. What? Sarah stood up, backing away. No, you don't understand. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They handcuffed her right there in the police station. Sarah's pregnant belly pressed against the cold metal as they processed her. Photographed, fingerprinted, put in a holding cell. The cell was freezing. There was dried blood in the toilet. Someone else's, Sarah hoped. The concrete bench was hard and cold. And Sarah was 11 weeks pregnant, alone and more terrified than she'd ever been in her life. Hours passed. No one would tell her anything. She asked for her phone call, and they ignored her. She asked for medical attention, and they laughed. Finally, a public defender arrived. Jeff Carlson looked like he was about 12 years old and carrying about 40 case files. Ms. Brennan, he said, dropping a stack of papers on the table between them. I'm Jeff Carlson. I've been assigned your case. I'll be honest with you. This doesn't look good. They have emails from your account authorizing payments to those shell companies. They have your signature on approvals. Catherine Whitmore is claiming you set up the embezzlement scheme and tried to frame her when you got fired. Sarah's world tilted. Those emails are fake, forged. I never authorized those payments. I processed them, yes, because Catherine ordered me to, but I didn't know they were fraudulent. Can you prove they're forged? I'd need a forensic expert. I'd need time. Bail hearing is tomorrow morning. They're asking for $50,000. Do you have that? Sarah thought about her bank account. I have $2,000. Then you'll be staying here until trial, which could be 6 to 9 months given the court backlog. I'm pregnant, Sarah said, panic rising in her voice. I can't stay in jail for 9 months. I can't give birth in prison. Jeff slid a document through the bars. Then you need to take the plea deal they're offering. Sarah looked at the paper. Plead guilty to misdemeanor fraud. 2 years probation. Sign permanent non-disclosure agreement about Whitmore Industries. Waive all claims to marital assets beyond prenup. Agree to never contact Whitmore family again. Pay $25,000 restitution. If I sign this, Catherine wins, Sarah said. She gets away with $12 million and I'm branded a criminal. If you don't sign, you're facing 10 years in federal prison. Your baby will be born in custody. Child Protective Services will take the baby immediately. You'll lose custody. Is that what you want? Sarah looked at the plea agreement, then at her hands resting on her barely visible baby bump. She spent that night in the holding cell, feeling wetness between her legs again. Bleeding, cramping. Terrified she was losing the baby, she banged on the bars. Please, I need a doctor. I'm pregnant, please. No one came for an hour. When a nurse finally arrived, she checked Sarah's vitals with obvious annoyance. You're fine, the nurse said. Cramps are normal. Stop being dramatic. I'm bleeding. I need to see an OB, please. It's after hours, no OB on call. You'll survive until Monday. The nurse left. Sarah sat in the dark, hand on her stomach, feeling the wetness and not knowing if she was losing everything. In the morning, they brought her to the bail hearing. Orange jumpsuit, handcuffs. She looked like a criminal. The judge set bail at $50,000, and then Catherine Whitmore stood up in the courtroom. Your Honor, Catherine said, her voice dripping with false concern, if I may address the court. Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry, Ms. Brennan, worked for my family for 5 years. I had no idea she was embezzling until our accountants discovered the discrepancies. However, I don't wish to see her suffer. She's clearly troubled. I'm willing to drop the charges if she signs an agreement releasing all claims against my family. The judge looked relieved, one less case on his docket. Ms. Brennan, the judge said, this is a generous offer. I suggest you take it. Sarah's public defender nodded frantically at her. Take it, take it, take it. Sarah looked at Catherine, who smiled serenely. If I sign, Sarah said, voice breaking, what happens to my brother? His charges? David's situation is separate, Catherine said smoothly. But I suppose, in the spirit of the season, I could be persuaded to drop those charges as well. A fresh start for the whole Brennan family. And my baby? Sarah's hand went to her stomach. You'll leave my baby alone? Catherine tilted her head, expression confused. Your baby? Sarah, dear, I have no interest in your baby. I'm going to be a grandmother to Marcus and Brittany's son. That's all I care about. It sounded reasonable, it sounded safe, but Sarah saw something flicker in Catherine's eyes. A calculation, a lie. Still, what choice did she have? Prison while pregnant, losing the baby, losing David? I'll sign, Sarah whispered. 30 minutes later, papers were signed, charges dropped. Sarah was released with an ankle monitor as part of her probation terms. Rachel was waiting in the parking lot. Thank God, Rachel said, pulling Sarah into a hug. I thought they won, Sarah said, her voice hollow. I lost. It's over. No, you're free. You're alive. The baby. For now, but Rachel, I have nothing. No money, no reputation, a criminal record. How am I supposed to raise a baby? How am I supposed to fight them? I can't even fight for myself anymore. They sat in Rachel's car. Sarah stared at the ankle monitor on her leg, the physical symbol of her defeat. I almost gave up completely, Sarah said softly. Almost decided surviving wasn't worth the fight. Rachel gripped her hand. What are you going to do tomorrow? Sarah was silent for a long time. Right now, she finally said, I'm going to survive. That's all I can manage. But even as she said the words, a small spark flickered in the darkness. Catherine had made a mistake. She'd let Sarah go, given her freedom, even if it came with an ankle monitor and a criminal record. And free, even barely, was better than caged. Sarah touched her stomach, where her baby, still holding on, still fighting, grew day by day. She would survive. For now. And while she survived, she would think. She would plan. And when the time was right, she would strike back. 2 weeks crawled by. Sarah lived in her tiny studio apartment, wearing an ankle monitor, working remote bookkeeping jobs for cash. She was 13 weeks pregnant now. The morning sickness was finally easing, but anxiety had taken its place. Constant gnawing fear that Catherine's promise to leave her alone was just another lie. Her phone rang one evening. Unknown number. Sarah had learned to be cautious with unknown numbers. Hello, she answered warily. Ms. Brennan, my name is James Beaumont. I know who you are, Sarah interrupted. You're Catherine's lawyer, the one who helped frame me. Why would I talk to you? Because I'm calling from a burner phone from my car, parked 3 miles from my office, and if Catherine knew I was calling you, she'd destroy what's left of my life. So please, just listen. Sarah sat down slowly, interested despite herself. I'm listening. I'm the one who created the forged emails, James said, his voice heavy with guilt. Catherine blackmailed me. Years ago, I borrowed money from a client trust fund to cover gambling debts. I paid it back, but it's still grounds for disbarment. She's been holding that over me for a decade. So you ruined my life to save your career? Yes, and I've regretted it every day since. But Ms. Brennan, what I did to you, the embezzlement frame-up, that was wrong, but it was just business to Catherine. A means to an end. But what she's planning now, he paused. I can't be part of it. Sarah's blood ran cold. What is she planning? Marcus's grandfather's will. Are you familiar with it? No, Marcus never talked about family finances. Here's what matters. Marcus doesn't fully inherit control of Whitmore Industries until he has a legitimate son by his 36th birthday. He turns 36 on February 14th, 3 weeks from now. If he doesn't have a son by then, control passes to a board of trustees, and Catherine loses power. Sarah's mind raced. But Brittany's pregnant. She said she's having a boy. Brittany miscarried at 14 weeks, James said heavily. That was 6 weeks ago. She's not pregnant anymore. She's wearing a fake pregnancy bump. Catherine is paying her $500,000 to maintain the charade. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. Why, what's the endgame? You're pregnant with Marcus's biological child. If you have a son, he would technically qualify for the inheritance. He's Marcus's legitimate offspring, conceived during your marriage. Catherine can't risk that. So her plan is to have you declared an unfit mother and get CPS to remove your baby at birth. That's insane, Sarah whispered. That's not legal. It's completely legal if the right people sign the right documents. And Catherine has the right people. She's been building a file on you for weeks. Your criminal record, your financial instability, fake psychiatric reports claiming you're unstable. I've never even seen a psychiatrist. She has Dr. Patricia Hendricks on payroll. Hendricks will testify you've been having phone sessions, that you've made threats against the baby, that you have suicidal ideations. By the time you prove it's false, the baby will be in state custody and Marcus will have been granted emergency placement as the stable, wealthy father. Sarah felt sick. But the agreement I signed says Catherine won't seek custody. She's not. Marcus is. It's a loophole. Why are you telling me this? James's voice cracked. Because I have a daughter. She's 30. And if someone did to her what Catherine is planning to do to you, I'd want someone to help her. I've already lost my soul working for Catherine. Maybe I can get a piece of it back by helping you. After James hung up, Sarah sat in stunned silence. Then her phone rang again. Her mother. Sarah, it's David. He's gone. He left the VA hospital. He's not answering his phone. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? Before her mother could answer, Sarah's phone beeped with another call. Houston police. She switched over. This is Sarah Brennan. Ma'am, your brother David Brennan was involved in an incident at the Whitmore estate tonight. He crashed his vehicle through the front gate. He's in custody. Is he hurt? Minor injuries. But ma'am, he had a firearm in the vehicle. Unloaded but present. Combined with his wife's psychiatric history, that's a felony charge. The DA is talking 3 to 5 years. Sarah's world tilted again. The next day, she visited David in county jail. He looked broken, sitting on the other side of the glass partition. I'm sorry, he said, crying. I saw the news about your case, the mugshot. They called you a criminal. I lost it. I wanted to make them pay. The gun wasn't loaded. I swear I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I just wanted to scare them. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Catherine. She answered on speaker so David could hear. Sarah, dear, Catherine's voice was syrupy sweet. I heard about your brother. Such a tragedy. Mental illness is so hard on families. I'm prepared to make you an offer. What offer? I'll drop all charges against David. He can go back to the VA hospital, get treatment, keep his benefits. But you need to do something for me. What? Sign a document giving up all parental rights to your baby. Sign custody to Marcus before the baby is even born. Do that, and David walks free today. Sarah looked at her brother's desperate face through the glass. You want me to give you my baby? Sarah said. I want you to give Marcus his child. You're in no position to raise a baby. No money, no stability, a criminal record. But the baby could grow up with resources, education, opportunities. David goes free. You get $50,000 to start over. And everyone wins. David was shaking his head frantically. Don't do it. If I don't sign, Sarah asked. Then David serves 5 years, loses his VA benefits. And your baby? CPS will take it anyway. You'll have nothing, not even David. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. The call ended. Sarah and David stared at each other through the glass. Don't you dare give up that baby for me, David said. I can survive prison, but you won't survive losing your kid. I can't let you go to prison, Sarah said, crying. You're my brother. And that baby is all you're going to have, David said. Save the baby. Let me go. Sarah left the jail with no answers and a decision that felt impossible. That night, she sat with Rachel in her apartment. What are you going to do? Rachel asked. Sarah thought about James's warning, about Catherine's plan, about the CPS order waiting to steal her baby. I'm going to use what James told me, Sarah said. I'm going to trade my silence about the embezzlement for David's freedom and a guarantee Catherine never touches my baby. Sarah, you signed an NDA. I can't talk publicly, but I can threaten her privately. She doesn't know what evidence I still have. She thinks she destroyed everything, but I've got backups. Cloud storage she doesn't know about. This is dangerous. I'm already in danger, Sarah said, one hand on her 14-week baby bump. At least this way I'm fighting back. She arranged to meet Catherine at James Beaumont's office. Neutral ground. Catherine sat behind a massive desk, James standing nervously nearby. Well, Sarah, Catherine said, have you come to sign the custody papers? Sarah placed a flash drive on the desk. No, I've come to make you a counteroffer. What's this? Every piece of evidence proving you embezzled $12 million. Wire transfers, shell company registrations, offshore account numbers, forged invoices, everything. I've backed it up in 3 different cloud storage locations with a dead man switch. If I don't reset the timer every 48 hours, everything automatically releases to the FBI, the SEC, and the Houston Chronicle. Catherine's face went pale, then red with rage. You signed an NDA, which says I can't talk publicly. It doesn't prevent me from protecting myself. If anything happens to me, if CPS shows up at my delivery, if David goes to prison, if I'm arrested again, the timer runs out and everything goes public. You're bluffing. Test me. Long silence. James spoke quietly. Catherine, she's got you. Take the deal. Catherine glared at him, but turned back to Sarah. What do you want? Drop all charges against David immediately and sign a legally binding document stating you will never seek custody of my baby, never interfere with my parenting, never contact me or my child again. Do that and the evidence stays buried. Catherine stared at her for a long moment. Fine. James, draft the documents. 2 hours later, papers were signed. David's charges dropped. Sarah had a signed agreement. She walked out of the office, papers clutched in her hand. Rachel was waiting in the car. Did she sign? Sarah nodded. She signed. David's free. The baby's safe. It's over. You did it, Rachel said. You actually did it. They drove away, and for the first time in months, Sarah felt something like hope. She had no idea it was about to be crushed again. 3 weeks passed like a dream, a fragile, temporary dream, but a dream nonetheless. David was released from jail and returned to the VA hospital for intensive treatment. The doctor said he was responding well to new medication. He even smiled when Sarah visited. Sarah's pregnancy progressed normally. 17 weeks. The anatomy scan showed a healthy baby girl. Maya, Sarah had decided to name her, after her grandmother who died when Sarah was 10. Sarah found a better job, remote financial analyst position for a tech startup. Good pay, legitimate work. She could afford to move into a better apartment, 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, a place where she could raise Maya. Rachel threw her a small baby shower, just the 2 of them and Rachel's daughter, Emma. Modest gifts, secondhand onesies, a crib someone was giving away on Craigslist, but it felt like abundance compared to where Sarah had been. And Marcus started calling. The first few calls, Sarah ignored, but he was persistent. Finally, at 18 weeks pregnant, she answered. Sarah, his voice was desperate. I need to see you. Please, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Marcus. There's everything to talk about. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. My mother manipulated everything. Brittany isn't who I thought she was. Please, can we just meet? Just coffee? Sarah was silent for a long moment, then, fine, 1 coffee. Public place. They met at a Starbucks in downtown Houston. Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. His expensive suit looked rumpled. You're showing, he said when he saw her. You look beautiful. What do you want, Marcus? I want to apologize. For everything. The divorce, the way it happened, my family's treatment of you. I was weak. I let my mother control my life. I let her convince me you weren't enough, when the truth is I was never enough for you. That's a lovely speech, Sarah said coldly. Very rehearsed. I know I can't fix it, but Sarah, that baby you're carrying, is it mine? Sarah's hand instinctively went to her belly. She'd known this question was coming. Yes, Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I want to be a father. I want to be in her life. I know I don't deserve it, but please, let me be there. Sarah studied him. This man who'd handed her divorce papers on Christmas morning. This man who'd stood by while his family cheered her humiliation. This man who'd chosen his mother over her every single time. But he was also Maya's father. And didn't every child deserve a chance to know their father? Supervised visits, Sarah said. Once the baby is born, we'll set up a formal custody agreement through lawyers. But you and me, we're done. Do you understand? There's no reconciliation. No second chances. Marcus nodded, relief washing over his face. Yes, whatever you want. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. That night, Sarah told Rachel about the meeting. I actually think he's changed, Sarah said. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Maybe co-parenting could work. Rachel looked skeptical. I hope you're right, but Sarah, be careful. Catherine is his mother. A few months of guilt doesn't erase 35 years of her controlling him. I know, Sarah said, but everyone deserves a chance to be better, right? Rachel didn't answer, and Sarah chose not to notice the worry in her friend's eyes. The next morning, Sarah's phone rang. James Beaumont, burner phone. Sarah, you need to listen very carefully. His voice was panicked. Catherine lied. The agreement you signed is meaningless. She's moving forward with the plan anyway. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? How? She has a workaround. She's not seeking custody directly. She's having CPS do it. She spent the last 3 weeks building a file on you. Documented evidence of instability. What evidence? I've been clean. I've done everything right. She doesn't need real evidence. She has Dr. Patricia Hendricks prepared to testify you have postpartum psychosis before you've even given birth. Claims you've been making threats against the baby, suicidal ideations. She has deep-fake audio recordings of you saying concerning things. That's insane. I've never met this psychiatrist. Doesn't matter. By the time you prove they're fake, the baby will be in state custody. Marcus, as the stable father, will be granted emergency placement. The agreement says Catherine won't seek custody. She's not. Marcus is. It's technically not a violation. When? When is this happening? The moment you go into labor. Any Houston hospital you check into, CPS will be notified. A judge has already pre-signed the emergency custody order. It's dated, waiting for Maya's birth. So what do I do? Give birth at home? I don't know, but Sarah, there's something else. Something worse. What could be worse than stealing my baby? Brittany, she's been getting nervous, asking questions. Catherine views her as a liability now that the fake pregnancy has served its purpose. I overheard Catherine on the phone discussing cleaning up loose ends after the baby is born. I think she's planning to kill Brittany. Jesus Christ. Make it look like complications from childbirth. Catherine has a doctor on payroll who could falsify records. Sarah, this woman is not going to stop. She's going to take your baby, eliminate Brittany, and walk away clean. Can you testify? I have no proof. It's my word against hers, and I'm implicated in everything. I'd be disbarred immediately. But I can tell you this, you need to fight back. Publicly. Make it so loud and public she can't make you disappear quietly. After James hung up, Sarah sat in stunned silence. Rachel had heard everything on speakerphone. What are you going to do? Sarah's voice hardened with determination. I'm going to do exactly what James said. I'm going to make this public. I'm going to expose her where she can't control it. At Marcus's inheritance ceremony. What ceremony? Marcus turns 36 in 4 days. February 14th, Valentine's Day. There's a gala planned, massive party to announce his full control of the company and introduce his heir. 300 guests, media coverage, Houston elite, Catherine's moment of triumph. You're going to crash it? I'm going to burn it down. For the first time since Christmas, Sarah smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been pushed too far and finally decided to push back. Catherine wanted war? Sarah would give her war. Sarah had 4 days to prepare. 4 days to build a case so airtight that even Catherine's money and connections couldn't suppress it. 4 days to convince people to risk everything by standing with her. She needed 3 things. Proof of Catherine's embezzlement, proof of Brittany's fake pregnancy, and proof of the CPS conspiracy. The embezzlement evidence she had. The CPS documentation she could get through Rachel's hospital connections. But Brittany was the wild card. Sarah found her at an upscale brunch spot in River Oaks, sitting alone with a mimosa and what looked like a very real baby bump under her designer maternity dress. Sarah slid into the booth across from her. We need to talk, Sarah said. Brittany looked up, startled. Sarah, what are you doing here? If Catherine finds out, she's going to kill you, Sarah said flatly. After the gala, after you've served your purpose. She can't risk you talking about the fake pregnancy. Brittany's face went pale. You're paranoid. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing Brittany a photo. This is Dr. Patricia Hendricks. She retired 5 years ago, but Catherine keeps her on retainer. Guess what she specializes in? Brittany stared at the photo, her hand trembling. How did you know? Catherine mentioned her to you, didn't she? Said you should see her for postnatal care after the baby's born. Last week, Brittany whispered. She was very insistent. I thought it was weird because I'm not actually pregnant. It's not postnatal care. It's your exit plan. She's going to kill you and make it look like eclampsia or hemorrhage. Marcus appears as a tragic widower, raising his son alone. You don't fit that narrative alive. Brittany started crying. I didn't know it would go this far. She offered me $500,000 to wear a bump for a few months. I thought it was just about appearances. I didn't know about murder. Help me stop her. Please. You're the only one who can prove the pregnancy is fake. What do you need me to do? Come to the gala. When the moment is right, take off the bump in front of everyone. Brittany wiped her tears, fear, and determination warring on her face. Finally, she nodded. Sarah contacted Dr. Wright next. I need proof that I'm pregnant with Marcus Whitmore's biological child, DNA confirmation, and I need you willing to testify publicly. Dr. Wright didn't hesitate. I'll run the paternity test, but Sarah, you're 20 weeks now, high risk. The stress from what you're planning. I don't have a choice, Sarah said. Then I'll be there. Rachel used her hospital contacts to photograph the pre-signed CPS emergency custody order. Judge Ronald Hartwick's signature. Dated for Maya's birth date. Emergency removal authorization. This is insane, Rachel said, staring at the document. They have everything set up. Not for long, Sarah said. For 4 days and nights, Sarah worked. She created a video presentation synchronizing all the evidence. Embezzlement spreadsheets, fake pregnancy timeline, CPS documents, audio recordings from James. Every piece of Catherine's conspiracy laid out in brutal detail. Brittany practiced her reveal, rehearsing what she'd say when she removed the prosthetic bump. Dr. Wright prepared her medical testimony and paternity test results. Rachel leaked to society reporters that something big was happening at the Whitmore Gala. And James, though he couldn't appear publicly, provided Sarah with sworn statements from Whitmore Industries employees about Catherine's fraud. The night before the gala, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, 20 weeks pregnant, showing clearly now. Her baby, Maya, kicked inside her. Your mama's about to do something crazy, Sarah whispered, one hand on her belly. But I'm doing it so you never have to live in their world. So you grow up free. Maya kicked again, as if in agreement. Sarah pulled out the dress she'd chosen for the gala. Simple, black, nothing fancy, but it showed her pregnancy clearly. She wanted everyone to see what Catherine was trying to steal. She thought about her mother, working double shifts at the hospital, about David, slowly healing at the VA facility, about Rachel, who'd given her a place to sleep when she had nowhere else to go, about all the people who'd lifted her up when the Whitmores tried to crush her. And she thought about Catherine, about Marcus, about the family that had cheered on Christmas morning as they destroyed her life. Tomorrow was reckoning day. Tomorrow, one way or another, this war would end. The Corinthian event hall glittered like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across 300 guests in evening wear. Red and gold decor everywhere. Valentine's Day meets Dynasty celebration. A stage dominated one end of the room with massive screens for presentations. Catherine Whitmore held court in a $50,000 gown, her smile sharp as diamonds. Marcus stood beside Brittany, who wore an elegant maternity dress with an obvious bump, her hand resting on it protectively. Tonight, Catherine announced to the assembled crowd, we celebrate not just my son's 36th birthday, but legacy, tradition, the Whitmore name continuing into the next generation. In just 8 weeks, our grandson will arrive. Applause, champagne toast, Houston's elite celebrating their own. The lights dimmed, the presentation began. A slick corporate video about Whitmore Industries, its history, its accomplishments, the dynasty Marcus's grandfather had built. Then Marcus took the stage. Thank you all for being here on this special night, he said, his voice confident. As of midnight tonight, I officially assume full control of Whitmore Industries, and I promise to honor my grandfather's vision. The back doors opened. Sarah walked in. She wore a simple black dress that showed her 20-week pregnancy clearly. Hair pulled back, no jewelry. She looked like an avenging angel. Whispers started immediately. Is that Marcus's ex-wife? She's pregnant? Security! Sarah walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet room. Security moved toward her, but Rachel and Dr. Wright stood up from their seats near the front. Let her speak, Dr. Wright called out, her voice carrying authority. She has evidence the board needs to see, Catherine hissed from the side of the stage. Remove her immediately. But several board members were standing now, curious. Wait, one said. If there's evidence relevant to the company. Sarah climbed the stage steps, awkward with pregnancy but determined. She walked to the podium and plugged in her flash drive. My name is Sarah Brennan, she said into the microphone. I was married to Marcus Whitmore for 5 years. I was the financial controller for this company, and I'm here tonight to tell you the truth about the Whitmore family. The screens flickered to life behind her. Catherine moved toward her. This is slander. She's a disgraced employee with a criminal record. Yes, Sarah said calmly. I have a criminal record for embezzlement, except I didn't embezzle anything. The person who stole $12 million from this company is standing right there. She pointed at Catherine. The screen showed wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts. Catherine's signature on every fraudulent approval. For 5 years, Sarah continued, Catherine Whitmore siphoned money from Whitmore Industries into fake vendor accounts. Summit Construction, Apex Materials, Horizon Consulting, shell companies routing to Cayman Islands accounts in her name. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Board members pulled out phones. Those are forgeries, Catherine shrieked. Then explain this, Sarah said. A video played. James Beaumont's testimony, face obscured, voice distorted, explaining the embezzlement scheme. Catherine's blackmail. Everything. The room erupted in chaos. Marcus turned to his mother. Mother, is this true? She's lying. Catherine's composure was cracking. She's a vindictive ex-wife trying to destroy us. Speaking of vindictive, Sarah said, turning to look at Brittany in the crowd. Brittany, tell them the truth. Tell them about the baby. Brittany stood frozen, shaking her head. I can't. She's going to kill you, Sarah said, voice gentle but firm. After tonight. You know it's true. Dr. Hendricks, the postnatal care appointment. Brittany, please, save yourself. Brittany looked at Catherine. Catherine's face was a mask of rage and silent threat. But Brittany had made her decision the moment Sarah showed her that photo. She walked to the stage on trembling legs, stood under the lights, cameras flashing. I'm not pregnant, Brittany said, voice shaking. I miscarried at 14 weeks. Catherine paid me $500,000 to wear a fake bump, to pretend, because Marcus needed an heir by tonight or he wouldn't get the inheritance. Shocked silence. Brittany reached under her dress, unclipped the prosthetic pregnancy belly, and pulled it out. She held it up under the stage lights. Foam and silicone, completely fake. The cameras went crazy. Reporters recording everything. Brittany? Marcus's voice broke. Why? I needed money, Brittany said, crying. My family is broke. My father's facing federal charges. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. Marcus turned to his mother, betrayal written across his face. You did this? You orchestrated all of this? To protect you, Catherine was losing control. That Irish trash, she pointed at Sarah, was never good enough, and now she's trying to claim her bastard child is yours to steal your inheritance. My child isn't a bastard, Sarah said quietly. She's your biological granddaughter. Dr. Wright stood up from the audience. I'm Dr. Helen Wright, Sarah's obstetrician. I performed a prenatal paternity test. Marcus Whitmore is the biological father of Sarah's baby with 99.9% certainty. I have certified results here. She held up documents. I'm 20 weeks pregnant with your daughter, Sarah said to Marcus. She was conceived in October, during our marriage. She's legitimate. She qualifies for the inheritance clause. The board members conferred frantically. If this is true, one board member started. No, Catherine screamed. That baby doesn't count. I have a CPS order ready to remove it the second it's born. That woman is unstable. You mean the criminal record you gave me by framing me for your crimes? Sarah said. More evidence flashed on screen. the forged emails, the timeline, James's testimony. And about CPS, Sarah continued. New documents appeared. The pre-signed emergency custody order, Judge Hartwick's signature, dated for Sarah's delivery date. Catherine planned to have my baby removed at birth using a corrupt judge and fake psychiatric evaluations. She was going to give Maya to Marcus, control him like a puppet, and control the inheritance through my child. Catherine lost all composure. You think you're so clever, she screamed, voice shaking with rage. I'll destroy you. I'll take everything. That baby will never be safe from me. You're done, Catherine, Sarah said calmly. The FBI is already outside. They've been listening to everything. The back doors opened. Federal agents entered. Catherine Whitmore, the lead agent said, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. They handcuffed her right there on the stage. The room watched in stunned silence as Catherine was let out, still screaming about her lawyers. Marcus stood alone, broken. He looked at Sarah with tears streaming down his face. I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know the full extent. I thought I was just choosing someone more suitable. I didn't know about the embezzlement, the baby-stealing plan, any of it. But you knew enough, Sarah said. You knew divorcing me on Christmas was cruel. You knew your mother hated me. You chose them over me because it was easier. I did. I was weak. I'm still weak. But Sarah, that baby, can I be part of her life? Sarah looked at him for a long moment. I'll think about it, she finally said. But Marcus, you'll never be more than her father on paper. You'll never be my family again. Some doors, once closed, stay closed forever. Sarah turned and walked off the stage. The gala dissolved into chaos behind her. Reporters live streaming, board members in emergency session, Brittany disappearing into the night. Sarah walked out into the cold February air, hand on her belly, finally free. 6 months later, Sarah sat in a rocking chair in her small house in suburban Houston, nursing her daughter. Maya was 2 months old, healthy and perfect, with her father's eyes and her mother's determination. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, a small yard, but it was theirs. Bought with money from the settlement when Whitmore Industries filed for bankruptcy and had to pay back creditors, including Sarah for wrongful termination. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but what they don't tell you is the pound, what you lose in the process of winning. Sarah had won, but the victories came with casualties. Catherine Whitmore was convicted on 15 federal charges, 12 years in federal prison. Sarah had seen recent photos. Catherine in an orange jumpsuit, mopping floors. Former queen, now just another inmate. Other prisoners mocked her. Everyone had seen the viral video from the gala. Catherine had no visitors. Her own children had abandoned her. Marcus lost control of Whitmore Industries. The board voted him out within a week of the gala. The company was sold to cover debts. Marcus now lived in a studio apartment and worked construction. Ironic, given his grandfather started in construction. He saw Maya once a month, supervised visits at Sarah's discretion. Maya called him Marcus, not Daddy. His dating profile honestly disclosed his past. Most women ghosted him after the first date. Preston Whitmore, Marcus's brother, lost his trust fund when the company collapsed. His wife divorced him and moved to California with their kids. Last Sarah heard, he was selling used cars in Dallas, his face on a billboard promising deals you could trust. Charlotte Whitmore was completely shunned from Houston society. Her husband divorced her when the scandal hurt his career. She'd tried to write a tell-all book, but no publisher would touch it. She spent her days watching Sarah's TEDx talks on YouTube. Sarah had become an advocate for financial abuse survivors. And crying. Brittany disappeared to Monaco with the money Catherine had paid her. She got immunity for testifying and reinvented herself as a luxury lifestyle influencer. Judge Hartwick was disbarred and imprisoned for corruption. Dr. Patricia Hendricks lost her medical license. She was under investigation for multiple murders. Catherine's conspiracy had revealed other victims over the years. James Beaumont voluntarily surrendered his law license and testified against Catherine in exchange for immunity. Sarah hired him as a paralegal at her new financial consulting firm. He'd found redemption helping others. He was like a grandfather to Maya now, playing with her on the floor, building blocks, smiling for the first time in years. David fully recovered from his PTSD with intensive treatment. He worked as a veterans advocate now, living near Sarah, helping with Maya regularly. Uncle David was Maya's favorite person. He'd gotten engaged to a woman he met in therapy, and Sarah had given them her blessing. Rachel and Sarah started a nonprofit together, the Brennan Foundation for Financial Abuse Survivors. Rachel had escaped her abusive ex when he was arrested on outstanding warrants. Her daughter Emma and Maya were being raised as cousins. But victory had cost Sarah too. Her mother, Maggie Brennan, died of a heart attack 3 days after the gala. The stress of everything, David's arrest, Sarah's pregnancy, the scandal, had been too much. Sarah was 21 weeks pregnant when she stood at her mother's graveside, alone except for Rachel holding her hand. She never got to meet Maya, Sarah said softly, looking at her daughter now. Never got to see me safe. She died worrying about me. Sarah had diagnosed PTSD from the ordeal, panic attacks when mail arrived from lawyers, nightmares about CPS taking Maya. She couldn't trust romantic relationships. She was in therapy twice a week. Her criminal record, though the charges were dropped, still showed up on background checks. Many companies wouldn't hire her despite her vindication. Starting her own consulting firm had been necessary but risky. I used to believe in justice, Sarah whispered to Maya, in systems, in people doing the right thing. I don't believe that anymore. I believe in power, and I hate that about myself now. Maya gurgled and grabbed Sarah's finger. It was Christmas morning, 1 year since the divorce. Sarah's small house had a modest tree and simple decorations. David arrived with his fiancée. Rachel came with Emma. They were having Christmas together. Chosen family. The doorbell rang. Sarah opened the door to find Catherine Whitmore standing there. She'd been released early, good behavior, overcrowding, strings pulled even from prison. She looked aged, broken, but that steel was still in her eyes. Hello, Sarah, Catherine said, voice different, less imperious, more human. What are you doing here? Sarah blocked the doorway. I came to meet my granddaughter. You have no rights, legal or moral. I know, I'm not here to demand anything. Please, 5 minutes, just let me see her. I've lost everything. My son won't speak to me. That baby is my only blood relative who doesn't hate me yet. She will hate you, Sarah said. When she's old enough, I'm telling her everything you did. I know, I accept that. But Sarah, I'm an old woman. I'll probably be dead before she understands. Can't I just see what I destroyed everything for? David appeared behind Sarah. Say the word, sis. Rachel joined them. She doesn't deserve even a glimpse. Sarah looked at Maya playing innocently on the floor. Catherine, Sarah said after a long pause, I want you to understand something. Family isn't blood. It's not money or status or legacy. It's the people who hold you when you're breaking. She stepped aside, letting Catherine see into the living room. Maya surrounded by David, Rachel, Emma, James, laughter, love, warmth. You see that? That's family. You taught me something important. You taught me that being right doesn't matter if you're alone. You won every battle your whole life and ended up with nothing. I lost almost everything and ended up with this. Catherine's tears streamed down her face. Can I hold her? Just once, us? No, Sarah said firmly but not cruelly. You can send cards on her birthdays. I won't throw them away, but you'll never hold her. You'll never whisper in her ear. You'll never tell her your version of this story. She'll know you exist, but she'll never know you. That's what you left yourself, Catherine. The outside looking in, forever. Please, Catherine begged, I'm begging you. You wanted me to beg. Christmas morning, 1 year ago. Now you know how it feels. Catherine pulled an envelope from her coat with shaking hands. I have something for her, a trust fund. $8 million. What's left after the government seized most of it. She can access it at 18 in a letter, explaining everything, not to manipulate her, just so she knows where she came from. Inside the envelope, trust documents, a letter addressed to Maya, and an old photo of young Catherine holding baby Marcus, showing she'd loved him once, before power corrupted her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Catherine said. I'm asking for a chance for her to judge me herself when she's old enough. Don't let your hatred poison her inheritance. Sarah looked at the documents, at the photo, at Catherine's broken face. I'll put the letter in a safe, Sarah said. When Maya is 18, I'll give it to her. She can decide if she wants to read it. She can decide if she wants the money. She can decide what kind of person you were. But Catherine, I'm making sure she knows the truth first. All of it. The embezzlement, the cruelty, the attempted kidnapping. And then, if she still wants to know you, that'll be her choice. Catherine nodded, relieved. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. It is. Merry Christmas, Catherine. Sarah closed the door. Catherine stood on the porch for a moment, looking at the warm glow through the window. The family inside, laughing. The life she'd never be part of. She walked away, alone, into the cold. Inside, Sarah returned to her family. David handed her Maya. You okay? He asked. Yeah, Sarah said. Yeah, I am. She walked to the fireplace, envelope in hand. For a moment, she considered burning it, erasing Catherine completely. But then she stopped. Someday, baby girl, Sarah said to Maya, you're going to ask about your grandmother. And I'm going to tell you the truth. All of it, the monster she was and the broken woman she became. And then you'll decide, because that's what I want for you. Choices, freedom, the truth, not the pretty lies I was fed. She put the envelope in a fireproof safe, then returned to her family. David, Rachel, Emma, James, chosen family, real family. Outside, snow began to fall. Through the window, Christmas lights glowed warm against the cold night. They thought destroying me would be easy, Sarah thought, looking at the people gathered around her. A poor girl who married up, disposable, forgettable. They didn't know that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who survives. I didn't win everything. I lost things I'll never get back. My mother, my innocence, my ability to trust easily. But I saved what mattered. My daughter, my truth, myself. Catherine Whitmore had everything: money, power, status. She ended up with nothing but memories of what she destroyed. I had nothing, and I built everything that matters from the ashes she left. Maya laughed, reaching for a Christmas ornament. Sarah caught her hand gently, kissed her tiny fingers. So if you're out there listening to this, Sarah thought, and someone's trying to erase you, trying to make you feel like you're nothing, remember this. The people who underestimate you always lose, because they never see the fire until it's already burning them alive. Be careful who you step on today. They might be the one holding the match tomorrow. Sarah looked at her reflection in the window. Scarred but standing, Maya in her arms, surrounded by real love. And for the first time in a year, she smiled. A real, genuine, unbroken smile. The kind of smile that comes from surviving the unsurvivable. The kind of smile that comes from knowing you didn't just survive, you won. Not the victory she'd imagined, not the perfect ending from a fairy tale, but something better, something real, something hers. Merry Christmas, Maya, Sarah whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. Welcome to our first Christmas together, the first of many. Outside, the snow fell softly, covering the world in white. A clean slate, a new beginning. And inside the small house in suburban Houston, Sarah Brennan held her daughter close and felt, for the first time since that terrible Christmas morning a year ago, something that felt like peace. Not the absence of pain, not the erasure of scars, but the hard-won peace that comes from fighting for what matters and refusing to let anyone take it away. Catherine Whitmore sat in a taxi, heading back to her empty apartment, watching the snow fall on a world that had moved on without her. Marcus Whitmore sat alone in his studio, looking at a photo of the daughter who would never call him daddy, wondering how he'd lost everything that mattered. Preston and Charlotte Whitmore spent Christmas in their respective corners of Exxon, forever marked by the scandal their mother had created. But Sarah Brennan spent Christmas surrounded by love she'd chosen, holding the daughter she'd fought heaven and earth to protect, in a home she'd built from nothing. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all. Not destroying them, though she'd done that too, but surviving, building, becoming more than they'd ever thought possible. She was the girl they'd dismissed, the woman they'd tried to erase, the mother they'd tried to break, and she was still standing. Not just standing, thriving. The snow fell, the fire crackled, Maya slept peacefully in her mother's arms. And Sarah Brennan, survivor of the Christmas betrayal, closed her eyes and let herself rest. The war was over. She had won. Catherine Whitmore died in federal prison on December 20th, 2 years into her sentence. Heart attack. Alone. No family members claimed her body for 3 weeks. When the prison finally released her personal effects, there was only one item, a creased photograph of Maya, cut from a newspaper article about Sarah's foundation. Sarah received notification of Catherine's death while feeding Maya breakfast. Her daughter was 14 months old now, walking, saying mama and Kadav and laughing at everything. Sarah felt nothing when she read the email. Not satisfaction, not grief, just a quiet closing of a chapter that had already ended. She deleted the email and went back to making scrambled eggs for her daughter. Marcus sent flowers to Catherine's funeral. He was the only one who attended besides the prison chaplain. That evening, he texted Sarah, "My mother died. I thought you should know." Sarah replied, "I know. I'm sorry for your loss." She didn't attend the funeral. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. On Maya's second birthday, Sarah opened the safe and looked at Catherine's letter for the first time. She didn't read it. That was Maya's choice to make someday. But she held it for a moment, thinking about the woman who tried to destroy her and ended up destroying herself instead. "Sleep well, Catherine," Sarah whispered. Then she locked the letter away again. Sarah's foundation expanded. They helped over 800 women escape financial abuse in its first 2 years. Sarah gave talks across the country. She wrote a book that became a bestseller. Not because of the scandal, though that's what drew people initially, but because of the hope in her story. The hope that you can lose everything and still win. The hope that the people who try to erase you can be overcome. The hope that family is what you choose, not what you're born into. David married his fiancée in a small ceremony. Sarah was the best woman. Maya was the flower girl, throwing petals everywhere and making everyone laugh. Rachel met someone too, a doctor at her hospital who thought her single mother strength was the most attractive thing about her. James lived to see Maya's third birthday, then passed peacefully in his sleep. He left his savings to Sarah's foundation. At his funeral, Sarah told the assembled crowd, "James taught me that it's never too late to do the right thing, that redemption is possible, that one act of courage can balance a lifetime of mistakes." Marcus continued his supervised visits with Maya. He was trying, really trying. He went to therapy. He worked hard at his construction job. He sent child support on time. He sent birthday cards Maya couldn't read yet, but that Sarah saved for when she could. But he never became daddy. He was Marcus, the man who visited sometimes, the man who made mistakes but was trying to fix them, the man who would always be part of Maya's life but never part of Sarah's. And Sarah was okay with that, because she'd learned something in the fire of her betrayal and her battle back. You don't have to forgive people to move forward. You don't have to let them back in to let go of the anger. You just have to decide what you are willing to carry and what you're ready to put down. Sarah put down the rage, the bitterness, the need for Catherine to understand what she'd done. She picked up her daughter, her work, her chosen family, her peace, and she kept walking forward. On the third Christmas after the divorce, Sarah stood in her living room, bigger house now, 3 bedrooms, backyard with a swing set, and watched Maya play with presents from Uncle David and Aunt Rachel and Uncle James's grandchildren who'd become Maya's surrogate cousins. Rachel was there with her fiancé. David and his wife were expecting their first child. The house smelled like turkey and poween and coffee and love. Sarah thought about that terrible Christmas morning 3 years ago, the envelope with divorce papers, the cheering family, the walk down the driveway in the cold with nothing. And she thought about everything she'd built from that nothing. "You okay?" Rachel asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of wine. Sarah took one, smiling. "Yeah, I really am." "Thinking about how far you've come?" "Thinking about how far we've come," Sarah corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have," Rachel said. "You're the strongest person I know." Sarah shook her head. "I'm not strong, I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Strong people don't break. Stubborn people break and then or refuse to stay broken." Rachel laughed. Fair point. They stood together watching the family they'd built as snow began to fall outside the window. Somewhere in Houston, Marcus Whitmore sat alone in his apartment, looking at a photo of Maya, wishing things could be different. Somewhere in a cemetery, Catherine Whitmore lay beneath frozen ground, her schemes and cruelty buried with her. Somewhere in Monaco, Brittany Sinclair posted another Instagram photo, pretending to be someone else, running from who she'd been. But in that warm living room, Sarah Brennan held her wine glass and watched her daughter play, surrounded by the people who'd chosen to love her when blood family had chosen cruelty instead. And she understood finally what victory really meant. Not crushing your enemies, though sometimes that happens. Not getting revenge, though sometimes that's necessary. But surviving, building, becoming more than what they said you could be. Choosing love when the world chose hate. Choosing hope when everything said give up. Choosing to stand when staying down would have been easier. That was victory. That was enough. That was everything. Mama, Maya called, running over with a stuffed animal. Play. Sarah set down her wine glass and scooped up her daughter, spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. This, Sarah thought, this moment, this Miriam, this life I built from ashes, this is what they couldn't take. This is what they couldn't destroy. This is what makes all of it worth it. The snow fell outside, the fire crackled, the family laughed, and Sarah Brennan, who'd been broken on Christmas morning 3 years ago, held her daughter close and knew with absolute certainty she hadn't just survived the betrayal. She'd transcended it. The Whitmores were yesterday. This love, this family, this life was forever. And that made her the real winner. Not because she'd crushed them, but because she'd built something they could never touch. Something beautiful, something true, something hers.